Ryan Neiman, Brian Wilson, Mary Catherine Ham, today's newsmakers, and you. The Morning Majority, 630.
WMAL. 6:37 on the Morning Majority. We have Jamie Kirchick with us, who is a writer-at-large for Radio Free Europe. And you've seen his work in New Republic, Wall Street Journal, Weekly Standard. He's all over the place. Jamie, how's it going?
Good. How are you guys?
And Jamie, you have been at the Tripoli Radisson. Are you still in Libya?
No, I left 2 days ago.
All right. How was your trip? Tell us about the progress over there. I know you saw Gadhafi's compound. What's the story?
Yeah. Well, it was exciting and dangerous. Yeah. But I'm quite hopeful. Despite what you see on television, Libyans are actually very, very positive about their future right now. The way they see it is that as bad as things are right now in terms of water shortages and the damage and the food shortages, and still there's ongoing violence. The way they see it is that the country was brought so low by this man that it can only go up from here. So they're very grateful to the United States, Great Britain, to France, to NATO, to all the countries that helped them in their struggle, and they're very optimistic about the future.
Do you think that that sentiment will last? Do you get some sense that maybe that the West did some good in this whole thing as far as relations in the Middle East are going in Libya?
I hope so. And really, the amazing thing is, if you look at the poll numbers, America is not popular in really any Arab country except Libya right now. And not only is America liked, I would say it's loved. This was really the only Arab country where I could walk around and actually tell people that I'm an American. Usually I say I'm a Canadian or something because you're often you want to avoid sort of dodgy situations. Right. But here they're very enthusiastic, and they really like welcoming people to come and to tell their story.
Well, what was everyday life like there right now? You mentioned there's this water shortage that's going on. Is there commerce every day? Is there any kind of government agency that's running these things, or is it more like, hey, the Libyan people are just taking care of things themselves?
Well, it's strange. There really are no services. The trash is collecting on the street. The city's beginning to really smell. The running water went off on Friday. Electricity has been on and off. I hardly saw anyone on the streets except, of course, for rebels manning checkpoints. Yet, somehow people are getting by, without, all the sort of things that you and I take for granted. Mm-hmm. I think, again, they understand that this was a very difficult struggle and that there's going to be a very difficult period, during this civil war. But they certainly think it's worth it. And I didn't hear any Libyans complain. There are lots of journalists complaining about the lack of running water in the hotel and the lack of food and whatnot, but I didn't hear a single Libyan complain about what they have to go through right now. What
was your sense? We hear a lot of who are the rebels. What was your sense from the people that you spoke with about, I guess, sort of some of the discussion has been about secular versus Islamist influences and maybe where this might head?
That it's hard for me to predict what's going to happen in the future. I think right now the vast majority of Libyans are concerned about one thing and one thing only, and that's getting rid of this regime. Yeah. And they've done that. They're almost there right now, certainly. It's unclear where Gadhafi is. I believe his family is now reported to be in Algeria. But they've essentially won the war. It's almost over. And now you're going to start to see, I think, the differences in the fissures between the more Islamist elements and the more secular liberal elements. But I would say generally the rebels I spoke to, they may not be the most, well-educated people. They may not have read the American Constitution, but they do have a very basic idea of what they want. And you see the word freedom written a lot in English. You hear that word spoken in English. Even though they've lived in a country where they've been very isolated from the world, they know what they've missed out on, and they know what other people have, and they do want that.
We're talking with Jamie Kirchick. He is a writer-at-large for Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty based in Prague and here in D.C., was just in Tripoli. Did you fear for your life at all?
A little bit. Again, when we went there were these reports of, scattered fighting and gunshots. There were a few moments where we were driving through neighborhoods where you could still see posters of Gadhafi hanging up, which was a sign that that was a dangerous neighborhood, because practically everywhere else in the country you'll see posters defaced on the ground. In fact, in the entrance to our hotel, where all the journalists were staying, the rebels had put a poster of Gadhafi on the floor of the door so that anyone walking into the building had to walk over his face. So in those rare moments when we were in sort of dodgy neighborhoods, it was frightening, certainly.
Can you give us an idea of who a typical rebel is, where they come from, and why they decided to take up arms?
Well, they're young men, some boys, really. I mean, there were guys walking around with guns who couldn't have been older than 15 or 16, but they're uniformly young men. I didn't see any women really on the streets at all. Libya is quite a conservative society, and it is still Ramadan, and so I didn't see women leaving the house. I think Libya or Tripoli sort of looked like a cross between South Central Los Angeles during the height of the riots and like Sierra Leone. You know, we have all these kind of boy soldiers running around with guns. But they were remarkably well behaved, very friendly. They weren't immature.
Did they seem organized?
Remarkably they did.
Wow.
It's incredible. I mean, I didn't see any kind of scuffles or arguments between them. They were very polite with us when we would pass through checkpoints. There was one moment where there was a street battle, and they told us to turn around quite hurriedly. But yeah, I mean, they're for a ragtag militia of guys in t-shirts and Hawaiian shorts and sneakers. They were quite organized.
Fascinating. It's great to have this sort of first person on the ground reporting. Thank you, Jamie. Good stuff.
Thanks for having me.